The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent when the voice echoed through the golden hall, cold and final, a sound that carried the weight of centuries of power. The council speaker stood in the center of the room, tall and glowing with the pale blue light of his species. His long arms folded neatly behind his back, as if this moment had already been decided long before Earth even arrived. His voice sliced through the silence like a blade of ice. "Earth will not be given a seat at the galactic table," he declared. It was not a suggestion. It was not a debate. It was a sentence spoken by those who thought themselves untouchable. Around the curved golden table sat hundreds of alien delegates, each representing powerful civilizations spread across thousands of systems. Their faces were strange, their bodies a mix of elegant and monstrous shapes. Eyes like crystals, skin like polished stone. Some with wings folded behind their backs, others with sharp teeth glinting in the light. As the words fell into the air, some tapped their long, thin fingers against the golden table, their version of polite applause. A few smirked, their thin lips curling into cruel smiles, and some whispered to their neighbors in languages that sounded like hissing steam and cracking metal. It was a celebration not of unity but of exclusion. The human delegation stood in a small section of the gallery, far from the center, separated like guests who were never really invited. 5 humans stood there in dark suits, plain and simple compared to the glowing robes and jewelry of the alien elite. Their clothes had no gold, no ornaments, no shimmering stones. Only a single silver emblem over the heart, the outline of Earth encircled by one thin ring. Their leader stood at the front, hands locked behind his back, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the table at the center of the hall. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He stared at the council as if memorizing their faces, one by one, burning them into his memory. Beside him, the others were just as silent, their expressions hard and unreadable. They didn't speak, they didn't protest, they didn't beg. They understood what this moment was. The speaker lifted one long, bony hand and the whispers stopped. Earth does not possess the stability, the heritage, or the influence required to join this council. He continued, his tone smooth like polished metal. The Terran people may observe, but will not participate in decisions concerning galactic matters. He didn't look at the humans as he spoke. He didn't even acknowledge them as living beings. He looked at the other delegates, the rulers of 1,000 systems who nodded in agreement, proud of themselves. A wave of approval rolled through the chamber. It wasn't a surprise. Everyone knew this decision was made long before the vote. Earth was young, too ambitious, too unpredictable. They saw humans as dangerous but small. In their minds, denying Earth a seat meant control. In reality, it meant something else entirely. The oldest of the alien leaders, a creature with 6 eyes like black pearls, shifted slightly in his chair. He didn't know why, but the air felt different. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry, but something was there, like the quiet weight of a storm pressing down before the first strike of lightning. The humans hadn't moved. They hadn't made a sound, but their silence was heavy. It was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of calculation. In the far back, an alien diplomat leaned toward another and whispered, "Why are they so calm?" The other gave a dry laugh. "Because they have nowhere else to go," he said. But he was wrong. The leader of the human delegation tilted his head slightly, taking in the sight of the golden table. It wasn't just furniture. It was a symbol. For centuries, the Galactic Council had ruled from this table, their decisions shaping star systems, building empires and destroying others. Every star map passed through this room. Every war was approved or denied here. Every law that touched 1,000 species was born on this table. And now, this table had rejected Earth. But Earth wasn't the same weak world it had been a century ago. While the galaxy laughed at human ambition, humanity had worked in silence. While they denied Earth trade routes, Earth built its own. While they mocked human technology, Earth perfected weapons no one had seen. While they kept Earth at arm's length, humans had built something in the dark. Something quiet. Something vast. The council speaker raised his arms and declared the decision sealed. A chorus of formal sounds followed. Bells chimed. Light rippled across the ceiling, and a ceremonial banner unfolded above the chamber to mark the final judgment. Alien reporters recorded every moment, broadcasting it to 1,000 worlds as a story of triumph. "The humans have been denied," their broadcast said. "Order has been preserved." Delegates stood and applauded, their robes swaying, their jeweled hands shining under the chamber lights. But not everyone smiled. A few alien generals who had faced humans before watched with narrowed eyes. They remembered something the others didn't. They remembered the wars, the brutal, fast, efficient human wars. They remembered how Earth had grown after every defeat. And now, watching those motionless figures in black, something inside them whispered, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The leader of the human delegation finally spoke, not loud, but low and steady. "Understood," he said. Just one word. No anger, no emotion. Then he turned. The others followed. Their boots echoed against the smooth stone floor, each step sounding louder than the applause around them. They walked down the gallery steps like shadows sliding into the dark, never once looking back. The alien delegates watched them leave, many of them amused. "See how easily they bend," someone muttered. But deep down, beneath the noise, the air was shifting. The tension didn't fade when the humans left. It grew heavier, thicker, like something pressing on the room itself. In the highest row of the chamber, an alien envoy who had studied Earth for years leaned forward, uneasy. He had seen that kind of silence before, not in diplomacy but on battlefields. It was the silence before the storm. He watched the human leader disappear into the shadows of the corridor, and for a brief moment, he felt something cold crawl up his spine. It wasn't fear of what humans could do right now. It was fear of what they had already prepared. Outside the chamber, the human delegation moved through the wide, polished corridors of the council spire. Alien guards watched them pass but didn't speak. The humans walked in perfect sync, their faces calm, but their eyes burned with something fierce. A message was already moving through hidden channels, encrypted and untraceable, spreading through the stars. Carried no anger, no emotion. Just a simple phrase, a phrase every human fleet would understand. A phrase that meant the time had come. Back in the chamber, the speaker raised a ceremonial cup to mark the victory of the council. "The galaxy remains stable," he declared. Delegates cheered. But above their heads, the ceiling lights flickered for just a second. Nobody noticed. Nobody except one old admiral who had fought against humans long ago. His heart tightened as he stared at the fading light. He whispered to himself, "They're not done. Not by far." The storm hadn't arrived yet, but it was coming. It was quiet, cold, and inevitable, and it carried the name of Earth. Far away from the glowing towers of the Galactic Council, beyond the soft light of their safe zones, hidden inside the cold black void of uncharted space, something massive slept. It was not on any official map. No trade route crossed it, no patrol scanned it, and no spy had ever returned from it. It was a place built in silence, forged in secret, far from the curious eyes of the galaxy. The stars here were quiet, their faint light reflecting off the armor of hundreds of human warships anchored in perfect formation. Their hulls were dark, blending into the void like shadows. No signals leaked out. No movement betrayed their presence. It was as if the entire fleet was holding its breath. Inside the command ship, a massive black structure built like a floating fortress, the atmosphere was different. Cold, focused. Not a single sound echoed in the war room except the soft hum of machinery. A large holographic display glowed in the center of the room, showing the live broadcast of the Council's decision to deny Earth a seat. The alien speaker's voice filled the room, calm and proud, declaring Earth unworthy. The officers standing in the war room didn't shout. They didn't panic. Their faces were blank like soldiers who already knew this moment would come. The admiral stood at the head of the room, tall and broad-shouldered, his uniform perfectly straight, his hands locked behind his back. His eyes didn't leave the hologram for even a second. Every word spoken by the council burned itself into his memory. Every smirk from an alien delegate carved itself into his mind like a scar. Around him stood generals, scientists, intelligence officers, and strategists. The silent core of Earth's true power. They had been waiting for this day for years. Some of them had built their entire careers for this single moment. No seat at the table meant something far greater than insult. It meant freedom. No seat meant no chains, no rules, no treaties to obey. It meant Earth was no longer pretending to play by someone else's game. When the broadcast ended, the Admiral didn't move. He stood in silence for a long time. The crew didn't disturb him. They knew that silence well. It wasn't hesitation. It was the storm building behind a calm sky. Slowly, he turned toward the officers. His voice was low but firm. "We begin now. No long speeches. No loud orders. Just 3 words." And like a chain reaction, the entire fleet came to life. A soft ripple of energy pulsed through the ships as dormant systems powered up. Dark engines began to glow faint blue. Thousands of hidden satellites that surrounded the fleet in deep space activated at once, their lenses opening like cold eyes staring outward. Encrypted messages were sent across hidden human networks, bouncing through black channels that the Council didn't even know existed. Every ship captain, every special unit, every silent watcher who had been waiting in the shadows received the same message: "It's time." Inside a small, dark operations room, 2 intelligence officers leaned over a console. One of them whispered, "They really did it. They really denied us." The other didn't even look up. "Good," he said. "Now we don't have to pretend anymore." All across the hidden human network, silent movements began. A cargo station in the far belt suddenly cut its communication lines and went dark. A listening post near a neutral border quietly turned its dishes away from Council signals and locked onto new targets. Patrol drones changed their flight paths without warning. What looked like random glitches to the rest of the galaxy was, in reality, the unfolding of a plan that had been buried in Earth's war archives for years. A plan written for the day they would be rejected. The Admiral walked up to the main control panel and placed his hand on the surface. A small security scanner slid over his palm, and the room lights shifted from soft blue to deep crimson. On the massive screen before them, the map of the galaxy appeared. Bright lines traced trade routes, communication hubs, and the major strongholds of the Council's power. Slowly, those glowing lines began to shift as human code infiltrated hidden cracks in their systems. Not an open attack, not yet. Just quiet movements, like invisible fingers tightening around a throat. The Admiral's second-in-command stepped closer. "They don't even know we're here," she said softly. "They've never looked beyond their own borders," he replied. "They've forgotten what happens when you push humanity against a wall." Deep inside the hangars of the fleet, pilots climbed into their crafts. Rows of black fighters lined up like knives in the dark, silent and waiting. The engineers moved like ghosts, their boots barely making a sound against the cold metal floors. They didn't speak. They didn't cheer. They knew what was coming. They had trained for it every single day in secret. A young pilot strapped into his seat, looking at the small patch on his sleeve, Earth's emblem. His heart pounded in his chest, but it wasn't fear. It was something else, something sharper, something like pride. In the intelligence wing, scientists monitored the flow of data coming in from human spy arrays placed all across Council space. Red markers began to blink. Places that would be cut off, stations that would disappear from the grid, supply lines that would quietly break. The galaxy had spent decades laughing at humanity, thinking it was just a loud, ambitious species that had risen too fast. What they didn't see was the other side of Earth. The side that didn't talk. The side that moved quietly. The side that never forgot. The Admiral finally faced the crew. His voice was steady, almost too calm for the weight it carried. "We asked for a seat," he said. "They gave us silence. So we'll give them silence too, before they ever hear us coming." Around him, faces hardened. Some had fought in wars. Some had lost everything to Council politics. Some had waited their entire lives for this moment. Not one of them doubted what was about to happen. This wasn't war, not yet. This was the moment before war. The cold breath before the first strike. Outside the command ship, the hidden fleet began to move. Slowly at first, like shadows drifting through space. One by one, their engines brightened to a dim, cold blue, their movements precise and silent. To the rest of the galaxy, they were still invisible. To humanity, they were a storm awakening. Deep within the Council's most secure systems, subtle glitches began to appear. Broken signals, unexplained interference, sudden silence from outposts. Nobody paid attention. Nobody except a few old alien generals who had once fought humans long ago. Those generals felt it like a chill in their bones. They didn't know what was happening, but they knew who was behind it. The Admiral stepped onto the viewing deck as the stars stretched endlessly before him. The Council believed Earth was weak because it spoke softly. But now, humanity had nothing left to ask for. No more begging. No more waiting. No more pretending to be small. From this point forward, Earth would not sit at the table. It would take the table. In the blackness of space, the first fleet broke formation and vanished into warp, leaving nothing but darkness behind. And in that silence, a single truth began to take shape. Not in words, but in the steady, unstoppable movements of a people who had been denied. Earth was coming, and it wasn't coming to talk. It was coming to take everything. While the Council celebrated its victory in the bright towers of their capital, small cracks had already begun to form across their vast network. Cracks so quiet and so small that no one noticed at first. In the Council's data cores, deep in the silent corners of their communications grid, things began to disappear. A cargo station on the rim went dark in the middle of a routine shipment. A communication relay that linked 5 star systems suddenly stopped transmitting. A patrol ship sent out a standard report at 0200 and was never heard from again. At first, the Council's intelligence officers dismissed it as technical failure, the kind of routine problem that happens in a network stretched across thousands of systems. But these were not random glitches. They were moves on a hidden board. Each silence, each failure, each missing signal was a calculated step in a plan written long before the Council even cast their vote. The alien delegates drank and celebrated in their golden halls, mocking Earth's rejection, believing they had contained a problem. But in the shadows of the galaxy, humans were already taking away the Council's eyes and ears. They moved like ghosts through the void. No alarms, no gunfire, no declarations. A single human stealth ship drifted through the dark toward a relay station hidden near the neutral border. Its black surface absorbed the light of nearby stars, its engines running silent. Inside, a small team of operators worked without speaking. One of them watched the station's defenses on a faint screen. "They don't even have shields up," she whispered. The commander gave a small nod. "They think they're safe," he said. "That's their first mistake." Seconds later, the ship released a burst of signal, a soft pulse no one could detect, and the station went dark like a candle being snuffed out. Across the galaxy, similar operations unfolded at the same quiet pace. Patrol ships disappeared into the void without distress calls. Distant trading posts found their navigation systems frozen with human code. Planetary scanners returned static instead of reports. What was once a perfect web of control was slowly unraveling thread by thread, and the Council didn't even know it yet. Their control over the galaxy relied on being able to see and hear everything. But one by one, their eyes were being shut. One by one, their ears were being cut off. Inside the Galactic Council's security hub, a massive chamber filled with glowing consoles and endless streams of data, technicians began to frown at their screens. "Sector 14 has gone silent," one of them muttered. Another leaned forward. "That's the 3rd station this cycle." They exchanged uneasy looks. The supervisor, an old alien with skin like cracked glass, narrowed his dark eyes. "Run diagnostics," he ordered. They did. They found nothing. No signatures, no attackers, no explosion patterns. Just silence. He clicked his jaw nervously. He had seen this kind of silence before, long ago, during the border wars when humanity fought their way through impossible odds. Back then, the battlefield would go quiet seconds before the first strike. It was never chaos first. It was always silence. The Council ignored his warnings. To them, humanity was just making noise. They didn't believe humans had the power to touch their networks, let alone shake the foundations of their reach. They don't have the capability, one of the counselors said, waving the reports away. They barely have a seat. How could they have an army? But that was the problem, they didn't have a seat. They had something worse. They had freedom. In the black depths of space, human stealth fleets moved like threads of smoke. Their ships had no shining hulls, no grand flags, no loud broadcasts. They were designed to be unseen. Some of them had been hiding for years, placed like seeds across the stars, waiting for a signal. When the council said no, the signal went out. They didn't need to prepare. They were already ready. A small infiltration team glided toward a council communication array orbiting a red dwarf star. The station's guards were laughing, unaware. A second later, the power grid shut down. Emergency lights flickered, then died. No shots were fired. When the backup crew tried to send a distress signal, they found the antenna gone. Not destroyed, gone. It had been sliced away with surgical precision. Hours later, in the same sector, a merchant convoy sent a final transmission before disappearing into the dark. The message was short. "Something's here," the pilot whispered. Then static. No one responded. No one ever would. In the great council chamber, the speaker stood before a crowd of cheering delegates. He smiled, his thin lips curving as he raised a cup of glowing drink. "Today," he announced, "the galaxy has shown Earth its place. Today we have kept order." The crowd roared with approval. But far beneath their celebrations, the security channels began to flood with alerts. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Lost contact with relay in Sector 2. Mining colony offline. Patrol route broken. Communication chain failure. One officer tried to speak, but the celebration was too loud. By the time the speaker finally looked at the report, it was already too late. Earth wasn't fighting a war with fleets and missiles. Not yet. Earth was removing the foundations that kept the council standing. They were cutting the lines before the council even knew a fight had started. The admiral of the hidden human fleet stood in the dark, his hands behind his back, staring at the galactic map as more red markers appeared. Each red dot was a council asset going silent. Each one was a step closer. "How long until they notice?" an officer asked. "They'll notice," the admiral replied. "But by then, they'll already be blind." Inside one of the largest alien defense stations on the edge of council space, a young lieutenant noticed that their early warning satellites were no longer reporting in. He checked again. Nothing. He called his commander, but the commander laughed. "Humans don't have the reach for something like this," he said. "You've been listening to war stories." Minutes later, the entire station went black. Their backup systems failed one after another like falling dominoes. Before the alarms could sound, the human ship had already vanished, leaving nothing behind but silence and fear. In the old archives of the Council, there were warnings written by the first species to ever face humans in war. "They don't attack like us," the report said. "They don't knock on the door. They become the door. And by the time you notice, you're already inside their game." No one in the current council leadership ever bothered to read those reports. They believed their power was unshakable. They believed no one could strike them in their own space. They were wrong. In the shadows, the plan unfolded with mechanical precision. Each disappearance made the council weaker. Each silent move brought humanity closer. The galaxy didn't hear the sound of an invasion. It felt the quiet pull of something sharp and inevitable. The council still thought they had won the day they denied Earth a seat. They didn't realize they had just given Earth the perfect excuse to take everything. And out in the cold void, fleets of black ships drifted like predators in the dark, patient and hungry, watching the council celebrate while the lights of their empire quietly went out one by one. On the farthest edge of council space, where the stars burned faint and cold, a massive alien fortress station floated in quiet confidence. It was a stronghold built to intimidate, a symbol of power that had stood untouched for over 2 centuries. Its towers stretched like black spears into the void. Its shields thrummed with steady energy, and thousands of soldiers guarded every level. The aliens who worked there called it unbreakable. They believed no fleet could approach without being detected. They believed no enemy could breach it without facing certain death. They were wrong. That night, their sensors showed nothing but open space, empty and harmless. No ship, no movement, no warning. And then, for the briefest second, the station's lights flickered. It was so small that most thought it was a power fluctuation. But it wasn't. It was the shadow of something passing through. In the control tower, officers leaned back in their chairs, bored from routine shifts. Patrols had become nothing more than habit. No one expected an attack this deep inside their borders. Another false alarm. One of them muttered, tapping the screen. The readings looked clean. But then, without a sound, the outer sensor ring vanished from their interface. 1 second it was there. The next it was gone. Sector 9 offline, the technician said slowly. The commander frowned, leaning forward. Run a diagnostic. The technician did. Nothing came back. The commander's pulse quickened. One by one, more sensor rings disappeared. Then the external comm array flickered out. That's not a malfunction, the commander whispered. The air suddenly felt colder. Outside the fortress, in the black ocean of space, a single human flagship emerged from the dark like a silent leviathan. It was nothing like the elegant curved ships of the Council. It was brutal, angular, built for war. Its armor was layered in deep black plates, absorbing all light, and its engines glowed with a soft blue fire that barely disturbed the void. It didn't announce itself. It didn't need to. The aliens had always imagined human warships as clumsy and loud. But this ship moved like a shadow sliding across the stars. Smaller vessels flanked it, their formation so tight they looked like extensions of the flagship itself. The fortress had been built to stop anything, but its builders had never faced something that didn't play by their rules. Inside the fortress, alarms began to ring too late. A young officer shouted, "Unknown signature approaching fast." The commander spun toward the screen, eyes widening as the massive shape resolved on the display. It wasn't supposed to be possible. No one had the technology to reach them undetected. But humanity didn't follow the old rules. "All shields to full," the commander barked. The station groaned as power surged through its ancient shield generators. Soldiers scrambled through long, cold corridors. Drones shot out from launch bays, spinning into defensive positions. But the human flagship didn't fire. It simply stopped a short distance from the fortress, its black hull facing the station like a predator staring down prey. For a long, terrible moment, nothing moved. The fortress sensors strained, trying to scan the human ship. But it was like staring into a void. "They're jamming us," an officer shouted. "I can't get a lock." The commander's breathing grew shallow. He knew this was no accident. Earth hadn't sent a ship here by chance. This was a message. But before he could react, the power across the station dimmed. Lights flickered. Consoles turned black. The fortress's heart, its mighty power core, pulsed weakly like a dying animal. Panic spread through the control room as screens went dark. "We're losing systems," a voice cried. "Shields are collapsing." "That's impossible," another shouted. But it was already happening. The human ship hadn't fired a single shot. It had simply shut the fortress down like flipping a switch. Inside the fortress hangars, emergency lights turned blood red as drones dropped lifeless to the floor. Docked fighters powered off. Turret cannons froze mid-turn. Soldiers who had trained for battle found themselves staring at dead control panels, their weapons useless. They realized with dawning horror that they were not in a fight. They were in a trap they hadn't even seen set. On the bridge of the human flagship, the admiral stood silent, hands behind his back, watching the fortress flicker in the distance like a dying star. Beside him, an officer reported calmly, "All defenses neutralized. Fortress Command has no external or internal control." The admiral didn't smile. He didn't need to. He had expected this. "Proceed with Phase 2, he said. A soft hum filled the flagship as its forward lights came alive. A massive projection of the council map unfolded above the bridge. The fortress was just the first of many. One by one, these strongholds would fall not to brute force but to silence. Inside the fortress, chaos turned to terror. The commander tried to send a distress signal through the last surviving channel, but the signal bounced back like it had slammed into a wall. "They've cut us off," someone whispered. "They've isolated us." For the first time in generations, the mighty fortress realized it was alone. A deep vibration rolled through the structure, not from weapons fire, but from something else, a presence. The human ship had extended a long, black docking arm. It moved with slow, deliberate precision, connecting to the fortress airlock like a cold hand gripping a throat. There was no explosion, just a soft click that echoed through every corridor. Then silence. The station soldiers rushed to the docking bay, weapons raised, hearts pounding. The airlock opened, and black-armored human soldiers stepped inside in perfect formation. No shouting, no chaos. They moved like a single living thing, their helmets reflecting the red emergency lights. The fortress troops aimed their weapons, but their systems were already disabled. A single human soldier raised a small device and tapped it. Every alien rifle shut down at once, as if surrendering. The aliens froze. Humanity had come without noise but with power that left no room for resistance. In the command center, the human boarding team arrived like ghosts. The commander tried to stand tall, tried to speak, but his voice cracked. What do you want?" he stammered. The human leader stepped forward, his voice calm and cold. "Nothing," he said. "We're just taking what was always ours." From the outside, the scene was silent. The black flagship hovered like a phantom, its lights barely flickering. The once proud fortress floated powerless, its defenses stripped away without a fight. And somewhere far away, in the golden halls of the Galactic Council, they were still celebrating, still laughing, still pretending Earth was weak. They didn't know their shielded empire was being carved apart piece by piece. The fortress, their first symbol of strength, had fallen without a single scream being heard. Back on the flagship bridge, the admiral gave the final command. "Broadcast the silent signal to all fleets. It begins." Across the galaxy, more black ships stirred awake, more targets were locked, and more strongholds trembled without knowing why. Earth had made its move. It didn't need to ask for a seat anymore. It was walking straight to the head of the table. And in the endless black of space, under the light of dead stars, fear quietly began to spread in the heart of the Galactic Council capital. Deep beneath the towers of gold and glass, the warning alarms began to whisper before they screamed. At first, no one paid attention. A lost relay here, a silent fortress there, a missing patrol ship. The Council believed themselves untouchable, believing their fleets too large, their power too secure. But silence is not an accident. Silence is a weapon. And when the silence began to spread across their empire, it was already too late to stop it. In a grand meeting hall lined with glowing banners, the delegates were busy raising their glasses, celebrating Earth's rejection as if it was a triumph. But even as they laughed, their security screens behind the walls flickered with quiet red lights. 1, 2, then dozens. Communication loss. Station offline. Supply line cut. The Speaker of the Council stood tall, his thin arms outstretched as he declared to the gathered rulers. "The galaxy stands united. Earth has been reminded of its place." His words drew applause from every corner of the chamber. But beneath the surface, in the Council's private war room, generals and intelligence officers were already gathering around glowing maps filled with blinking alerts. A grim-faced admiral slammed his claw against the table. "This isn't random," he growled. "Someone's cutting us apart piece by piece." A younger officer tried to calm him. "It's Earth," the admiral snapped back. Who else would strike without being seen? But the counselors didn't want to hear it. Pride blinded them. They had mocked Earth for so long that the idea of it being a real threat sounded like a bad joke. Then the first live feed came in, a fortress station in the outer sectors, one of their strongest defense lines, floating dark and silent. No survivors, no damage, just dead systems. A ship, black and massive, had appeared and then vanished like smoke. The Council's smile cracked. A second feed arrived minutes later. Another station, another blackout. No distress signals. No battles. Just silence. The speaker's confident expression faltered for the first time as reports flooded in from across the sectors. Patrol routes gone. Communication chains severed. Entire fleets cut off from command. The room that once held nothing but arrogance now buzzed with confusion and fear. On the hidden bridge of the human flagship, the Admiral watched the same map with calm eyes. Each blinking red light on the Council's board was a carefully planned strike on his. Every station that went dark wasn't a lucky attack. It was the next step in a long chain of moves prepared years ago. "They're finally waking up," his second-in-command said quietly. The Admiral gave a short nod. "Good," he replied. "Let them realize who they mocked." His voice was steady and cold, a storm wrapped in stillness. Back in the Council chamber, the speaker called for silence as a nervous delegate stood up. "What are we going to do?" he demanded. Another shouted, "This is a terrorist act." A third slammed his hand down and cried, "They've declared war." But even as they spoke, no human fleet had sent a declaration. No voice from Earth had spoken. No diplomat had threatened. Humanity didn't announce wars anymore. Humanity simply acted. And their silence terrified the galaxy more than any weapon. The Council activated their central defense grid, a massive system built to unite their fleets under one command. The lights on the control interface blinked rapidly, and then died. The system wasn't responding. "We're locked out," an officer said, panic bleeding into his voice. "That's impossible," the speaker snapped. "The grid is unbreakable." But the Admiral on the flagship had already anticipated that very line. Years earlier, human intelligence had mapped every hidden flaw in their grid, every lazy upgrade, every outdated code line left untouched because the Council had grown arrogant. They had built their empire believing no one could ever reach them. Earth had reached them years ago. Above the Council's capital planet, the first shadow appeared in the night sky. A human cruiser broke through the blackness of space, its hull reflecting no light, its engines whispering across the void. Planetary defense scanners struggled to track it. By the time they caught a clear reading, 3 more ships had emerged. By the time they aimed their defenses, the defense grid was already offline. Panic spread like a flood through the command centers. "Who authorized this?" someone screamed. "No one," came the quiet reply. "Humanity didn't ask permission. Humanity took." Across the galaxy, civilian networks began to pick up strange signals. Old Council fortresses showing no activity, powerful fleets silent, high command unreachable. Rumors spread fast. Some said Earth had created a superweapon. Some said they were using technology no one understood. Others whispered a more dangerous truth. Humanity had been preparing for this the entire time. They had waited in the dark while the Council feasted in the light. Now the light belonged to them. On the bridge of the Council flagship stationed above the capital, commanders shouted orders, trying to bring their scattered fleets together. But the messages weren't going through. Human code had already buried itself deep in their communication system like a virus that had waited patiently. Their fleets weren't united. They were blind. And in war, blindness is death. One of the commanders turned to the speaker on the main line, his scaled face pale. "They're inside our systems," he said. "We're fighting a war we can't even see." Back in the Council chamber, the speaker tried to calm the delegates, but the power shifted in the room. The smug faces were gone. Fear had replaced them. The same leaders who had laughed at Earth hours ago were now whispering in panic. One delegate slammed his fist on the table. "You said they were weak," another shouted. "We should have crushed them years ago." Someone else whispered, "We can't fight something we can't even see coming." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, human fleets moved with silent precision. No announcements, no declarations. Just black ships gliding through the void like blades through water. Their formation was perfect. Their timing flawless. The Admiral stood at the center of it all, watching the galaxy that had denied Earth begin to bend. "They gave us nothing," he said quietly to his officers. "So we'll take everything." The Council scrambled to respond, but their power was built on control, on predictable systems. Humanity thrived in chaos. Where the Council expected order, humans brought storms. Where the council expected words, humans brought silence. And now that silence was spreading through every star system like an infection that could not be cured. The speaker's voice echoed through the council chamber, but it no longer sounded powerful. It sounded small. "We must negotiate," he whispered to himself, but even he knew it was too late. The time for talk had ended the moment they denied Earth a seat. As the first wave of human ships broke orbit and descended closer to the capital, the alien guards on the surface looked up at the dark sky and saw nothing but black shapes moving silently through the stars. No banners, no speeches, just shadows. A world that had laughed at Earth now watched its own sky darken. Humanity hadn't come to be heard. Humanity had come to be felt. And that feeling spread like thunder in the bones of every being in the council. The warning had become a reality. Earth wasn't knocking on the door anymore. Earth was already inside. Panic spread through the Galactic Council's empire like a crack racing across glass, fast and unstoppable. The news that had been whispered in the shadows now burned through every corner of their network. Defense stations were silent, their mighty fleets scattered, their communication grid broken like shattered glass. In a single night, the empire that once ruled the stars with arrogance had been reduced to confusion. Commanders shouted over failing channels, diplomats begged for updates, and every leader in the Golden Chamber felt something they had never felt before: fear of Earth. For centuries, they had controlled everything through their council: trade routes, alliances, law, and war. But Earth was not playing by those rules. Earth was rewriting them. Across dozens of sectors, alien generals tried to rally their forces. They sent emergency signals to regroup their fleets, but the messages vanished into silence. Their ships drifted blind through space, unable to see the enemy coming. Whole battle groups waited for orders that would never arrive. On one distant planet, a proud alien admiral stared at his dark screen as the last of their relays flickered out. His officers asked what they should do. His hands trembled as he whispered, "We can't fight what we can't even find." It was a truth the council had spent years ignoring. Humanity didn't build its power to show it off. It built it to strike when no one could stop it. The first counterattacks were clumsy and desperate. A fleet of 60 council ships launched toward one of the black zones, believing they could crush whatever force was hiding there. Their strategy was old, predictable, loud. When they arrived, they saw nothing: no planets, no stations, no fleets. Just darkness. Then, one by one, their ships disappeared from the scanners. No explosion, no battle, just silence swallowing them whole. The last message sent by the fleet captain was a whisper: "They're everywhere." Then static. The council had spent centuries fighting loud wars. Humanity had built itself to win silent ones. Inside the council chamber, the speaker's voice cracked as he tried to hold order. Delegates shouted over each other, blaming everyone but themselves. Some called for war, some called for surrender, and others sat in terrified silence. Their golden walls, their pride, their power. It all felt like a fragile shell now. An emergency council of generals appeared on the central screen. Their faces were pale, their voices shaking. "They're not just attacking fleets," one of them said. "They're dismantling us. Communication, economy, defense, everything. This is not a war. This is a takeover." Those words fell heavy on the chamber. Takeover. The very idea that Earth could take the Council's power was unthinkable a week ago. Now it was the only reality. Meanwhile, in the black void between systems, human fleets moved like a storm with no sound. Their formations were tight, their movements precise, their communication flawless. Every step had been planned long before this day. Humanity's strategy wasn't to destroy the Council. It was to make the Council crumble on its own. By the time alien leaders noticed what was happening, their power would already be gone. The Admiral stood on the flagship's bridge, hands behind his back, eyes cold as the galaxy stretched before him. "They're panicking," his second-in-command said. "Good," the Admiral replied. "Panic breaks empires faster than guns." Alien resistance grew weaker with every hour. Whole systems began to fall into chaos without a single battle. Merchants abandoned trade lanes. Private fleets refused to fight. Colonial governors cut their own comms and waited for whoever would arrive first. Some planets even sent hidden messages to Earth, not in defiance, but in surrender. They didn't want to die for a council that could no longer protect them. Humanity didn't need to conquer everything. It only needed to let the council rot from the inside. In one of the largest council shipyards, chaos erupted as alarms screamed. The main defense grid was offline. No enemy was in sight, but the system's core was locked by human code. A code so clean and silent that their engineers didn't even know how to touch it. Suddenly, all of the shipyard's heavy cruisers powered down, leaving thousands of alien workers staring at cold, dark metal. A single human transmission appeared on their main screen. No voice, no face, just words in a calm, white font. Stand down. The workers didn't even fight back. One by one, they lowered their weapons not because of fear, but because they knew resistance was pointless. In the Council's intelligence headquarters, a group of panicked officers slammed their claws on their consoles as more reports flooded in. "They've taken the outer fleets," one shouted. "We've lost contact with 6 major strongholds. They're pushing toward the core," another cried. "They're inside our systems." An older officer stared at the map as red shadows consumed sector after sector. His voice trembled when he spoke. "They're not inside our systems," he said slowly. "They were always inside. We just never saw them." And that was the terrifying truth. Humanity didn't invade. Humanity was already there, hiding beneath their arrogance the entire time. Some species tried to rally their own local defense fleets, breaking away from the Council's control, but that only made things worse. Without central leadership, they started fighting each other, accusing each other of betrayal. The unity that held the Council together was cracking, and humans hadn't even fired a full-scale attack yet. On a distant moon, 2 alien fleets, once allies, opened fire on each other over control of a supply line. Humanity didn't need to break them. They were breaking themselves. The Speaker of the Council locked himself inside the high command chamber, surrounded by his personal guard. His once proud voice shook as he listened to the reports. "Our fleets are failing," one general said. "We've lost control of the defense network," another added. "Even the colonies are turning against us," whispered a third. The Speaker slammed his hand down on the table. "How can one world do this?" he roared. The room fell silent. No one answered, because deep down they all knew the answer. It wasn't about one world. It was about the years they had spent underestimating it. Above their capital, black human ships filled the edge of orbit like a silent storm. Alien defense commanders stared at their screens in disbelief as the fleet appeared without sound, without warning. There were no demands, no speeches, no negotiations, just their presence. For the first time in centuries, the Council had no idea how to fight back. One commander whispered, "This isn't war. This is domination." The words hung in the air like a curse. On the flagship, the admiral gave a simple order. "Expand the perimeter. No resistance leaves orbit. No voice escapes." His officers moved like parts of a machine, calm and disciplined. There was no victory speech. There was no joy. This was justice, and justice didn't need noise. As human ships surrounded the capital, the Speaker looked up at the darkening sky, and for the first time, the galaxy's rulers understood what it meant to be powerless. The resistance didn't collapse in a single battle. It cracked under the weight of its own pride. Humanity didn't need to crush them in fire. It had already taken everything that mattered: their control, their unity, their confidence. The Council had built their empire like a tall tower of glass, and Earth had knocked out the base in silence. The rest was simply falling. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council, once the beating heart of a galaxy ruled by arrogance, now trembled beneath a silence so deep it felt alive. The golden table that had stood as a symbol of their absolute power glimmered weakly under flickering lights. Outside, the night sky over the capital burned faint with the glow of hundreds of human ships locked in perfect formation. The Council's defenses had crumbled like sand, their fleets cut off, their networks gutted. There was no more confusion now, no more denial. Every delegate in that hall understood the truth. Humanity hadn't just come to knock on their door. Humanity owned the door. The Speaker of the Council, who only days ago had mocked Earth with a smirk, now sat hunched in his chair, eyes wide, hands trembling. The roar of alien voices that once filled this room had been replaced by whispers. Whispered questions, whispered fears, and above all, whispered regret. The massive doors of the chamber shook once, twice, then slowly opened with a deep mechanical groan. Every head in the room turned. The guards positioned near the entrance tightened their grip on their useless rifles. The golden banners hanging from the high ceiling fluttered from the sudden gust of cold air sweeping in. A single human soldier in black armor stepped through first, silent, his boots echoing against the polished floor like a hammer striking bone. Behind him came more, rows of soldiers, faceless behind dark helmets, moving like shadows in perfect formation. No speeches, no shouting, no weapons raised. They didn't need any of that. Their very presence was enough. These were not guests. They were the new owners of the room. The Speaker tried to rise, his old authority clinging to him like a dying flame. "You have no right to," he began, but his voice cracked halfway through. No one listened. The human soldiers didn't stop. They didn't argue. They simply walked to the golden table and surrounded it, their silent precision louder than any army's battle cry. And then, through the doorway came the human leader. Dressed not in royal robes or council colors but in the same black uniform as his soldiers, he walked with calm steps, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. The room bent around his presence. Every delegate who had once laughed at humanity's weakness now looked at the floor. Some clenched their teeth. Some trembled. Some simply sat in silent shock, watching their world turn to ash. The human leader approached the golden table, the same table that had denied Earth a seat only days ago. He ran his hand along its surface slowly, like a man touching a monument not out of respect, but out of ownership. The Speaker's voice wavered again. "This is the seat of the council," he said weakly. The human leader turned his head slightly, his eyes cold, and replied with a calm, quiet voice. "No," he said, "it was." And then, in a movement that felt heavier than any battle, he pulled out the central chair, the Speaker's chair, and sat down. Not as a visitor, not as a negotiator, as the one who now held the table itself. The hall fell into a silence so complete that even the breathing of the delegates seemed too loud. The Speaker stared at the man sitting in his chair. The delegates didn't move. They didn't speak. The human leader placed both hands on the golden table, leaned forward, and looked at the alien rulers who once ruled without question. "You built this table," he said slowly, his voice calm but sharp like a blade. "You decided who spoke, who mattered, who lived and who didn't. You thought Earth was beneath you. You denied us a seat." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "But now," he continued, "there is no table without us. There is no council without us. There is no galaxy without us." The Speaker tried to protest, but the words died in his throat. Around the room, other delegates began to bow their heads, not because they wanted to, but because they understood. They weren't equals anymore. They were subjects. Their fleets were gone. Their stations were silent. Their power was broken. And the galaxy had a new center now. One built not on their arrogance, but on humanity's relentless will. Outside the chamber, human ships cast their long shadows over the capital like an eclipse swallowing the light. The alien civilians below watched from their windows in silence. There were no explosions, no battles raging in the streets. Humanity didn't need war to win. It had already won. Inside, the human leader stood again and walked around the golden table slowly. His boots echoed against the floor. The delegates flinched at every step. He stopped behind the Speaker's chair and placed his hand on it. "You once thought you controlled everything from here," he said softly. "But your power was built on the illusion that no one could challenge it. You never realized that silence was the loudest answer you'd ever get." He leaned forward slightly. Earth isn't here to ask anymore. We're here to take. One of the younger delegates, his voice shaking, dared to ask, "What will happen to us?" The human leader turned toward him, eyes unreadable. "What always happens," he answered. "Those who thought they ruled will learn to listen." Then, without another word, the human leader pressed his palm to the center of the table. A small pulse of light spread outward across the surface, replacing the council's ancient symbol with a new one, a silver outline of Earth, encircled by a single ring. The entire chamber gasped. A symbol of power changed with a single touch. The speaker, once the most powerful voice in the galaxy, could only stare in silence. His empire had fallen without a final war cry, without negotiation, without mercy. The human soldiers didn't need to raise their weapons because the galaxy had already surrendered. It surrendered the moment it underestimated Earth. It surrendered the moment it believed that denying humanity a seat would keep it safe. And now the rulers of the galaxy sat in their chairs like prisoners inside their own house. As the human leader returned to the chair at the head of the table, he looked at the silent chamber one last time. "This table belongs to everyone," he said quietly. "But it will never again belong to those who think they are above the rest." He leaned back, calm, in complete control. "Today, Earth sits here. Tomorrow, the galaxy will listen." The soldiers stepped back, their formation perfect, their silence absolute. The delegates didn't clap, didn't speak, didn't move. They simply watched the new power take its throne, their pride collapsing beneath the weight of what they had built and what humanity had claimed. Outside, the dark fleet stretched across the stars and across the galaxy. A single truth began to spread like fire. Earth had taken the table. Not with shouting, not with begging, with silence, precision, and unstoppable will. The galaxy had changed in a single night. No battles for the history books, no grand declarations of war, no desperate cries broadcast through the stars. Just silence. A silence so deep and heavy that it drowned every corner of the old council's empire. The same fleets that once controlled the galaxy with arrogance now floated helpless, scattered, leaderless, blind. The same golden towers that had mocked Earth's request for a seat now stood under the cold shadows of Earth's black fleet. The mighty Galactic Council had not been destroyed in a glorious war. It had been stripped apart piece by piece, until nothing was left but a hollow shell and the cold realization that power no longer belonged to them. Power belonged to Earth. Across the stars, every system felt it. Distant colonies woke up to new signals coming through their channels, clean, sharp, and unmistakably human. Council orders no longer arrived. Human directives now echoed through the void, firm and unchallenged. Patrol stations that once bowed to the Council's emblem now turned their satellites to face the Terran fleet. Governors who had once feared the Council's punishment now rushed to send pledges of loyalty to Earth. They didn't do it out of love. They did it because the old rulers were gone, and the new power stood tall and unshakable. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was quiet, and in that quiet, humanity's name spread like fire. On the capital planet, the streets were eerily still. The alien banners that had flown over the Council's towers for centuries were being lowered one by one. Black and silver flags, bearing the simple emblem of Earth surrounded by a single ring, replaced them. No one resisted. No one dared. Humanity had not crushed them with flames or bombardments. It had shown them a kind of power they didn't understand, unseen, unstoppable, absolute. Alien citizens stared at the sky as black warships drifted silently above like patient predators. The fleet didn't fire a single shot because it didn't need to. Everyone already knew who ruled now. Inside the council chamber, the golden table had become something else entirely. Where once hundreds of alien delegates had shouted, debated, and commanded with loud arrogance, now they sat in silence, small and powerless. The human leader sat at the head of the table, not surrounded by diplomats but by quiet, disciplined soldiers. The council speaker, stripped of authority, sat lower than he ever had before. He no longer spoke for the galaxy. No one did. Humanity had no intention of sharing its voice. Not yet. It had taken centuries for the old powers to build this council. It had taken Earth a single, calculated strike to take it away. On the central projection, a map of the galaxy slowly shifted as old council sectors were reclassified one after another. Human forces didn't need to march on every planet. The planets surrendered before they even saw a fleet. Entire regions fell in line without a single battle. Leaders who once mocked Earth now begged for its favor, their messages reaching the capital in floods. We recognize Earth's authority. We pledge loyalty. Please don't destroy us. Each transmission was logged without reply. Humanity didn't need to answer. The galaxy already knew the answer. In the black depths of space, the human fleets moved like a living machine, repositioning, surrounding, securing. They didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. This was not a victory bought with emotion. It was a quiet, precise takeover of everything the Council thought untouchable. The Admiral stood on the flagship bridge, hands clasped behind his back, his cold eyes watching the map flicker as another sector changed color. One of his officers approached, his voice steady. "They've stopped resisting," he reported. "They're bending faster than projected." The Admiral gave a slow nod. "Pride is easy to break when it's built on air," he said softly. "They thought power meant speaking the loudest. We showed them silence is louder." Alien leaders who once considered themselves gods of the galaxy now sat under the weight of their own fear. Some lowered their heads quietly, trying to keep their systems intact. Others clenched their jaws, remembering the way they had laughed when Earth was denied its seat. Now that denial was a scar on their history, a mistake that would never be forgotten. A few tried to flee to distant sectors, hoping to escape Earth's reach. None succeeded. Human fleets moved like the darkness itself. Fast, silent, and impossible to predict. Every ship that tried to escape vanished into the void. Every secret base fell without a whisper. On the capital world, the Speaker of the Council sat alone in his former office, staring out at the night sky. He could see the human ships hanging there, silent but suffocating, like the gaze of a predator that no longer needed to chase its prey. Once, he had spoken to the galaxy with a voice that carried power. Now, no one was listening to him. No one cared. When the human envoy entered the room, he didn't look up. "So this is how it ends," he whispered. The envoy didn't answer. There was nothing to say. History didn't need his words anymore. It belonged to Earth now. The human leader addressed the galaxy not with a speech of fire, but with a short transmission broadcast to every major system. His voice was calm, unhurried, almost unervingly steady. "You spent centuries believing that power belongs to those who sit at a golden table," he said. "You were wrong. Power belongs to those who build their own table." He paused, letting the silence stretch out like a blade over the entire galaxy. "The Council is no more. Earth leads now. Not because you allowed it, but because we took what was denied. This is not your galaxy anymore. This is ours." Every species, every fleet, every system heard it. No one challenged it. No one even tried. The silence that followed was not resistance. It was surrender. It was the sound of a galaxy that had bowed to a power it didn't see coming. The same silence that had once been used to humiliate Earth now became its greatest weapon. It was over. Humanity had not just taken the seat at the table. It had taken the table, the room, the council, and the stars themselves. The Black Fleet hung above the capital like a wall between the galaxy and its old life. Beneath that wall, the world was reborn under new rule. The council that had dictated the future of trillions was reduced to nothing more than a memory, a warning carved into the minds of every species. Never underestimate Earth. Humanity didn't conquer with numbers. It conquered with precision, patience, and a will no one could break. And so the golden age of the council ended not with a roar, not with an explosion, but with quiet footsteps walking into the chamber they thought they owned and taking everything. The galaxy belonged to Earth now, and the stars themselves seemed to fall silent, as if they, too, had accepted the new order. In that silence, history bent its knee, and humanity sat at the head of the table that was once denied. And this time, there would be no one left to say no.